because you won't damage them so much. Right, so that's kind of what they look like, right? And they tend to have, like, they grow. Hey, it's Greg on here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I've got some sunchokes underneath that glass over there. And I thought I'd do a video where I pick them, and then I'm going to do another video where I cook them. I've talked about the fact that I grow sunchokes in various garden tour videos, and people ask me from time to time, when do you pick them, what do you do with them, blah blah blah. And if you don't know anything about them, if you've never grown them before, especially if you're gardening sort of in a colder zone, zone 6, 5, you know, they're 4, they're a really hardy plant. They survive the winter. They're very easy to grow, and they taste very good, really good tasting. Just an easy, you can put them in the worst soil you've ever seen, they'll proliferate. To the effect that they can even be a bit invasive if you don't stay on top of them. I mean, the fact that they're invasive also means they're productive, right? So they produce a lot, right? You put like one little, piece of root in the ground, maybe the size of your finger, and you'll get like a handful of those tubers or rhizomes or whatever they are. It's the root part that you eat. You gotta, like, the ratio of what you put into what you get out is it's like potatoes in that sense, right? You put in 1, you get like 10 out, sort of thing. So they're a very easy to grow, forgiving plant. They taste really good. I mean, to give you an example, my kids aren't huge fans of squash. I sort of have to bargain with them or manipulate them to get them to eat squash. They're not huge fans of potatoes. I have to bargain, manipulate, etc. to get them to eat potatoes. They love sunchokes, just love them. Although one side effect is that they do sort of give you gas, and there's, if you eat them raw, that's the most. You can eat them raw or cooked, but when you eat them raw, they're even more gassy. I find that when you cook them, they seem to be not quite as bad like that. I can use them and almost stick them in anything. I'm going to do a cooking video after I've harvested these, a separate video with the sunchokes, to walk you through how I think is the tastiest way to present them. But if I got a few in the fridge, this time of year, I'm basically picking them every week before the ground freezes up. And I'm using them in everything. I've thrown them in with pasta sauces, I've thrown them in with soups. They're sweet, so they make a lot of things. Anything you're cooking, they give it a sweet sort of taste. But if you roast them, even if you're not using smoke, they have that's the best way I can explain it. If you roast them in the oven, they have an interesting, almost like a smoky taste. So they're really good. So let's pull this thing off. I'll talk about why I've got some glass on here, and let's have a look at what these things look like. All right, so I got some glass on here. This is just like a portable cold frame sort of thing. It's good for getting things growing in the spring. But the ground was freezing up last week, so I didn't know if I was gonna. I didn't want to harvest these all at once. One thing about sunchokes is that they don't store well. I mean, you can harvest them, stick them in your fridge, and you got to eat them within a week. They start to go all spongy, and they just lose their sort of good qualities fairly quickly. So you got to kind of keep them in the ground. So if the ground's starting to freeze, you got to keep the ground from freezing. So I put this glass over here. This is where they're growing. This is the stems, right? So I left the stems sticking out of the ground, so I'd know where they were, right? But this is the sort of stems they have. So I just put something over them to keep them from freezing up. I'm going to start from this side and work my way over. I don't think I'm going to pick them all today, because this glass seems to be doing a pretty good job at keeping the ground from freezing. It's not frozen here, so that's okay. So let's have a look. Let's see what we got. I planted them next to this blackberry. Is probably not the best plan. I just sort of stick things in places, and then I think about it, and I don't think I'm going to grow something. I mean, I'd really like the blackberries to sort of own this space, and I think I've got a better place to put sunchokes next year. When you're picking them in November, you can just stick them back in the ground. This time of year, you probably want to leave some to overwinter, and then you can break them up. Let's just pull a few of the ground. You can see what I'm talking about here. So some of them are actually sticking out a little bit. Where did I put that? I got a stick here. I find a stick's good for a lot of root vegetables. A stick's a good thing to use to harvest, because you won't damage them so much. Alright, so that's kind of what they look like, right? And they tend to have they grow in these nodules, and you'll get dirt in between the nodules, but when you're washing them in your sink in the kitchen, you know, if you got a problem like that, you just sort of break them open, and then you can get that dirt that's in the nodules. They're easy to clean. Perhaps I'll walk you through that in the kitchen as well. But inside they're this super duper white, and you can eat them when they're raw. They're very sweet. Kind of tastes like I don't know why they call them Jerusalem artichokes, but like a water chestnut, I suppose, would be a good example. But nutty. They're kind of nutty. Anyway, they're nice. They have a nice flavor when they're raw, and you could put them in a salad. But whew, you start to expand, if you know what I mean. It's not very romantic. Let's put it that way. So I cook them. Anyway, you get a lot. So I mean, you put something like this in the ground, one of these, right? And so I don't tend to break off pieces. The big pieces like this, I eat these. And you know, when I'm next November, I'll pull some of these out of the ground and move them somewhere else. But the ones that are sort of on their own in one piece, those are the ones I like to plant, because they've got no. There's another one. It's just sort of on its own, right? They've got no imperfections. They're not going to get attacked or anything. Look at that. The worms are still working away here. Anyway, they're kind of everywhere in the ground here. They're really. See what I'm doing here? All right. So this is where they were growing. I got some nice soil here, and they're just kind of everywhere in here, right? Some more. I always think they'd be a great thing to plant just like in the ditch between your house and the road. They'll grow anywhere. I have a little garden that's got like really poor. There's a good hunk there. Look at that. I have a little garden that I built for my kids that's just like using the worst soil possible, like nothing soil. And things don't grow well in that garden. And I jammed a couple of these in that garden last spring. And they grew great. Like they loved it there. And what I'm pulling out of the ground here is from just a handful of these things. Like, you know, they're very prolific, I have to say. You get a lot for what you put in. You get a lot out, and they're totally maintenance free. It's not like I did they seem to be pest free, and you don't have to do any work to maintain them. I didn't water these or do anything. They're incredibly easy thing to grow. Now these are one of the few calorie crop root veg type things that are indigenous to North America. I mean, we always think of corn and potatoes and squashes and things like that, but most of that sort of came up from the warmer latitudes. These were here. These were in North America, in the Northeast. And, the indigenous people here sort of, you know, the Europeans learned about these from the people that had been here before, that knew what they were doing, right? Just a great. I think I've picked enough for a couple days now, so I got enough. I've picked about 1/3 of what's here, and all of this, I'll show you the bowl, but everything I've got here is from just a couple plants, really. Just a couple of those little ball type things I showed you earlier. Yeah, so I still got some left there. I'll cover that back over. And put the glass back on. Anyway, that's a sunchoke. I got a good meal here, and I'm gonna do a video on how I like to cook them and preparing them and all that sort of stuff. It's really not that hard, and they're really good tasting. You don't need one of these glass things. It's just if you're worried the ground's going to freeze up and you're not going to be able to get at them, that's when you need some sort of solution. You don't need a wooden box like this. You could just put plastic, you know, clear plastic, or even a clear plastic garbage bag over the area. Just weight it down with a couple of rocks. You don't have to get this sophisticated. I just have one of these, so yeah, but it's a bit overkill. And in fact, the adjacent ground isn't even frozen under these leaves, so I didn't even need it here. I was just we had a big cold snap last week, and I was worried that was it. although it does seem like the ground is, everything's thawed back out here, so I guess I can do more gardening videos. Right? Good for you. I can get a bit more of, there's a lot of things I wanted to do this fall, and I might have another weekend here to work with to do some of those things, so we'll see what I can get done today and tomorrow, if the weather holds up and cooperates. Anyway, that's the sunchoke. I'm going to do a video at later on the week on how to cook them. There's lots of different things you can use them for. But I'll show you how I do it. I'll talk more about that in that video, so stay tuned for that. If you have a source of these, definitely take advantage of it. You can plant them in like November and just leave them, and they'll come in, they'll start growing in the following spring. But you can also plant them in the spring. You can just, like, I'm going to leave some on the ground here. And in April, I'll dig them up, I'll break them up, I'll pick the ones, and I'll put, pieces like this in the ground. And each one of these will become like, it'll become like, each one of those will become this much, right? So they really multiply well. And they taste really good, and they're just, they really go well with my philosophy of gardening. A nutritious, easy to grow, zero maintenance, high calorie sort of plant, right? And they'll grow anywhere too. They're extremely forgiving of poor soils. They'll grow in anything. I found you can stick them just about anywhere. I put one in one of my walking trails. I stuck one in my kids' garden last year, where the soil is terrible there, and it grew. And I had some here in sort of really good, horse manure enhanced, well mulched, cared for, no-till garden soil. And I don't really, I don't even know if there's much of a difference. I'd have to really do a comparison. I'm not, to the eye, I'm not noticing, each one seemed to give back like a 10-to-1 or 20-to-1 ratio in terms of what I put into what came out. So they're just a great plant for that sort of thing. They don't store well, so when you pick them, you got to use them within a week. That's why some people might, if you wanted to keep harvesting over the winter, you'd probably want to put some sort of thing over them to keep the ground from freezing, if that's even possible where you are, because they have to stay on the ground. If you pick them all and put them in like a cold room, they'll go all soft and spongy, and they just won't really keep. They got to stay on the ground. So if you want to keep them in the ground and continue to harvest them all winter long, you got to have some way of keeping that ground from freezing up, and depending on where you are, that may be easier or more difficult depending on how cold it gets and how wet it is and so on and so forth. Yeah, stay tuned for that cooking video, and I hope you found that interesting, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe, and get the word out there about the sunchoke. It's just a great plant. I mean, these things, it took minutes to plant these, and now I've got all this, I've probably gotten about, I spent about 5 minutes planting these, and I've gotten like probably 8 meals like this out of it, if not more, right? So definitely worth it. So until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.